The rain came down in sheets that Saturday evening, turning the rural highway into a ribbon of reflected light. Thomas Parker squinted through his windshield wipers, driving his old pickup truck home from his second job at the hardware store. At 45, Thomas worked 2 jobs to support his daughter, Lily, who was 16 and dreaming of college. His wife, Anna, had passed away from pneumonia 5 years earlier, leaving him to navigate parenthood alone. But Thomas didn't complain. He'd learned that life gives you what you can handle, and sometimes a little more. As his headlights swept around a bend, he saw here a figure walking barefoot along the shoulder of the road, soaked to the bone. A woman in what looked like a formal dress, holding her shoes in one hand, her other arm wrapped around herself against the cold. Thomas pulled over immediately. He'd taught Lily to help people in need, and he couldn't very well drive past someone in distress. He rolled down his passenger window. "Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need help?" The woman turned, and even in the rain and fading light, Thomas could see she'd been crying. She was perhaps in her late 30s, with dark hair plastered to her face. Her dress, a cream-colored and elegant despite being mud-stained and torn at the hem, clung to her in the downpour. Her voice caught. "I'm sorry, I don't want to be any trouble." "You're no trouble at all," Thomas said gently. "But you can't walk in this weather. Please, let me give you a lift somewhere, wherever you need to go." She hesitated, shivering, then nodded. Thomas reached across and opened the door. The woman climbed in carefully, trying not to drip too much on his seat. Thomas immediately turned up the heat and grabbed an old blanket from behind the seat. "Here," he said, handing it to her. "You must be freezing." "Thank you." She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders gratefully. My name is Catherine. Thomas Parker." "Nice to meet you, Catherine. Though I wish it were under better circumstances." He pulled back onto the road. "Where can I take you?" Catherine was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. "I don't know," she finally whispered. "I don't have anywhere to go." Thomas glanced at her, concerned. This was clearly more than just car trouble. "All right, how about we start with getting you warm and dry? There's a diner about 10 miles up the road. We can get you some hot coffee, and you can figure out your next step. Does that sound okay?" She nodded, not meeting his eyes. They drove in silence for a while, just the sound of rain drumming on the truck roof and the rhythmic swish of the wipers. Finally, Catherine spoke. "You must think I'm crazy. I don't think anything except that you've had a rough day and you needed help. That's all I need to know. I was supposed to get married today." The words came out in a rush. 2 hours ago, actually, at the Riverside Estate. 500 guests, orchestra, ice sculptures, the whole production. Thomas absorbed this quietly. The torn formal dress suddenly made sense. "I take it you didn't go through with it?" "I made it all the way to the altar." Catherine's voice was thick with emotion. "I looked at Richard, that's his name, Richard Blackwell, and I suddenly saw my whole future stretched out before me. 20, 30, 40 years of being Mrs. Richard Blackwell, of attending charity galas and sitting on boards and hosting dinner parties for his business associates, of being the perfect wife in the perfect house with the perfect smile." She pulled the blanket tighter. "And I realized I couldn't do it, not for another day, let alone a lifetime. So I said, I'm sorry, I can't, right there in front of everyone, and I ran, grabbed my shoes and just ran." Thomas nodded slowly. "That took courage." Catherine laughed bitterly. "Courage? I humiliated him, humiliated myself. His family has been planning this wedding for a year. Do you know how much a wedding at the Riverside Estate costs?" "I imagine quite a bit." $200,000, she said it flatly. "Not including my dress, which cost her $18,000, for a dress I wore for 45 minutes. Thomas whistled low. That's more than my house is worth." They reached the diner, and Thomas pulled into the parking lot. Inside, the warm glow of fluorescent lights and the smell of coffee felt like salvation. The waitress, Betty, had worked there for 30 years and had seen everything. She took one look at Catherine's bedraggled state and brought over towels without being asked. Thomas ordered 2 coffees and a plate of Betty's famous apple pie. Catherine protested that she wasn't hungry, but he insisted gently. "Humor me. You've had a shock. You need something warm inside you." As they sat in the vinyl booth, Catherine slowly began to relax. She told Thomas about Richard, a successful real estate developer, charming, ambitious, from old money. They'd met at a fundraiser 3 years ago. He'd swept her off her feet with expensive dinners and weekend trips to the Hamptons. He wasn't the bad man, she said carefully, just not the right man. He wanted a wife who would look good in photographs and entertain his clients. I wanted a partner, someone who'd notice if I was unhappy, someone who'd ask about my day and actually listen to the answer. What do you do? Thomas asked. For work, I mean. I'm a children's book illustrator. I haven't picked up a paintbrush in 2 years. Richard thought it was a quaint hobby but not something I should focus on once we were married. He wanted me to dedicate myself to charitable work instead. His charitable work, of course, for the optics. Thomas shook his head. Sounds lonely. It was. Catherine took a sip of her coffee. But I convinced myself that was what grown-up life looked like. Compromise, practicality, security. She looked at Thomas directly for the first time. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you stop? Most people would have driven right past. Thomas considered this. My late wife, Anna, she used to say that we're all just walking each other home, that we're here to help each other through the hard parts. I try to live by that, for her, for my daughter, for myself. You're a widower. 5 years now. Pneumonia took her fast. Lilia, that's my daughter, was 11. It's been just the two of us since. I'm so sorry. Thank you. It's been hard, but also beautiful in unexpected ways. You learn what really matters when you lose someone you love. And it's not the size of your house or how expensive your wedding is. It's the small moments, reading together before bed, laughing at a dumb joke, knowing someone truly sees you. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. That's what I want, what I've always wanted. They talked for over an hour. Thomas told her about Lily, about working 2 jobs to save for her college fund, about his wife and the life they'd built together on a shoestring budget that had been rich in all the ways that mattered. Catherine told him about growing up in boarding schools, about parents who showed love through trust funds rather than presents, about her art and how she'd let it slip away. Finally, Catherine asked, what do I do now? I can't go back to Richard's house. It's his house, really. I just live there. My family is. Well, they'll be furious. I've embarrassed them socially. That's the cardinal sin in my world. Thomas thought for a moment. I have a guest room. It's small, and the house isn't fancy, but you're welcome to stay until you figure things out. No pressure. No expectations. Just a safe place to land for a bit. Catherine stared at him. You don't even know me. Why would you do that? Because you need help, and because I have the ability to help. That's reason enough. He smiled. Besides, Lily would never forgive me if I left you stranded. I'm raising her to be the kind of person who helps others. Can't very well contradict that with my actions, can I? That night, Catherine met Lily, a bright-eyed 16-year-old who took one look at Catherine's torn dress and immediately offered her pajamas and sweatpants. I'm so glad you're okay, Lily said with the earnest concern of the young. Dad said you had a really bad day. The worst, Catherine agreed, but it's getting better. Over the next few weeks, something remarkable happened. Catherine stayed in the guest room, helping out around the house, cooking meals, and slowly rediscovering herself. She set up a makeshift studio in the corner of the living room and began painting again, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. Lily became her biggest fan, watching in fascination as Catherine's illustrations took shape. These are amazing, the teenager breathed, watching Catherine paint a dragon curled around a tower. Have you ever published a book? 2, actually. A long time ago. Catherine smiled. Maybe it's time for a 3rd. Thomas came home from his shifts to find his house filled with laughter and the smell of home-cooked meals. Catherine was funny and kind, easy to talk to. She listened to Lily's teenage dramas with genuine interest and insisted on helping with chores despite Thomas's protests. You're a guest, he'd say. I'm a freeloader if I don't contribute, she'd counter. Let me help. 3 weeks after that rainy night, Catherine's phone rang. She'd been avoiding it mostly, but this time she answered. Thomas heard her voice grow cold. Richard. Yes, I'm fine. No, I'm not coming back. I've already had my lawyer start the paperwork for. Yes, I know I'm entitled to nothing. I don't want anything. I just want to move on." A pause. Then, more firmly, "I hope you find someone who wants the life you're offering. I genuinely do. But that person isn't me. Goodbye, Richard." She hung up and sat down heavily at the kitchen table. Thomas poured her a cup of tea without asking, "You okay?" He offered me a settlement, $2 million to sign an NDA and never speak about him or the wedding publicly. She laughed without humor. Blood money to protect his reputation. "Are you going to take it?" "Number, I don't want his money. I want my life back, my real life, not the one I was play acting." 2 months later, Catherine found a small apartment above the bookstore in town. She'd reconnected with her old publisher and was working on a new children's book series. Money was tight as she'd walked away from Richard's world with only her savings, but she was painting every day and sleeping through the night for the first time in years. She and Thomas remained close friends. She came over for dinner twice a week, joined them for Lily's school events, became part of their small family. Sometimes, late at night, Thomas wondered if it might become something more, but he never pushed. The friendship was too valuable to risk. One evening, a year after that rainy night, they sat on Thomas's porch while Lily did homework inside. Catherine had just gotten word that her new book was going to be published. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "That night you picked me up, I'd been walking for 3 miles in the rain. At least a dozen cars passed me. Some slowed down, looked at me like I was crazy, then drove on. You were the only one who stopped. I'm glad I was there. You saved my life, Thomas. Not in the dramatic way, maybe, but in the way that actually matters. You showed me that kindness still exists, that good people are real. You gave me a place to land when I was in free fall." Thomas was quiet for a moment. "You did the hard part, Catherine. You walked away from a life that was wrong for you. That takes real courage. I just gave you a ride and a spare room." It was everything. She reached over and squeezed his hand. "You and Lily, you showed me what a real family looks like. Not money or status or perfect photographs, just people caring about each other, being present, seeing each other." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset over the same road where they'd first met. Lily came out and joined them, chattering about her day, and Catherine listened with the same genuine interest she always showed. Later, after Catherine had gone home, Lily said to her father, "You know she's in love with you, right?" Thomas nearly dropped the dish he was washing. "What? No, we're just friends, Dad." Lily gave him the look that teenagers reserve for particularly slow adults. "She looks at you the way I imagine Mom looked at you, and you look at her the same way. It's complicated, sweetheart." "Why?" "Because she used to be rich, because she was engaged to someone else. That's all in the past. She's happy now. You're happy when she's around. Seems pretty simple to me." Out of the mouths of babes, Thomas thought. 3 months later, Thomas and Catherine went on their first official date. Nothing fancy, just dinner at the diner where they'd first talked, sitting in the same booth. Betty brought them pint and winked. "Took you too long enough," she said. They took it slow, building on the foundation of friendship they'd already created. A year later, Catherine moved into the house, not into the guest room this time, but into Thomas's room, his life, his heart. They married in a small ceremony in Thomas's backyard with 30 guests of friends, neighbors, Lily's classmates. Catherine wore a simple dress that cost $200 and felt more beautiful than she ever had in her $18,000 gown. There were no ice sculptures, no orchestra, no society photographers. Just people who loved them, celebrating a love that had grown from a single act of kindness on a rainy road. As they danced their first dance, Lily had made a playlist on her phone. Catherine whispered to Thomas, "Thank you for stopping that night." "Thank you for getting in the truck," he whispered back, "for taking a chance on a stranger with an old pickup and a big heart." "Best decision I ever made," she said, "running away from the wrong life, running toward the right one." Sometimes the end of one road is just the beginning of another. Sometimes the person who stops to help you in the rain turns out to be the person you've been looking for all along. And sometimes the smallest act of kindness, a simple offer of a idea, can change the course of two lives forever. Not because of money or status or grand gestures, but because someone saw another person in need and simply said, "Let me help." That's the kind of love that lasts, the kind built on small kindnesses, daily choices, and the recognition that we're all just walking each other home. And in the end, that's the only kind of love worth having.